Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us, your favorite podcast app on Apple, Spotify, or Five Reasons YouTube channel, or Apple Podcasts on Android. You can do either of those, but not Apple Podcasts. Anyway, check us out wherever it is you can find us. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. That's $2.99 per month. You bypass the Apple upcharge. Link is right here in the description. You get access to 10 different channels, including our draft channel, our transaction channel, stage shows, host updates, and more. The place for the most heat information, conversation, consternation, celebration, and repudiation, and all of the other Asians that you can come up with. So check it out. It's Off the Floor. Also, Prize Picks, use the code 5 FIVE, legal in the state of Florida. Put down your $5. You get 50 to play right away, and you can play like me. Not like Brady, by the way, because he's really struggling with our NBA Finals contest, but like me. So check it out. Prize Picks, use the code 5 FIVE, put down your 5, get your 50. And now, today's episode.
Mercy. Luxurious Heat Nation. Yeah. Mercy and Lago. Down to Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing bubble frauds. Down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick with Five Reasons Sports. We got Digital Adel. You can follow him at Digital Adel. He's our resident draft guy. Also, check him out on the draft channel on our Discord and on playback.tv/5RSN. Also, recent episodes, just did one with Alex about, I think we posted that one already. Yes. Whether or not Giannis likely staying in Milwaukee now, or at least that seems to be the hint. Does that mean that the price goes up for KD? And how should that affect the Heat? And then I sprung an episode on Eternal and Brian Fonseca where I asked them at the very last minute to choose the 5 players that are currently on the Heat who you would rebuild around. And we agreed on 4, the 3 of us. We agreed on 4. 5th one I expected to be trouble, and it was. Speaking of trouble, we got Adele here to go through the draft. That was a terrible segue. But what we were going to talk about today, I asked you for a topic and you gave me this one, so let's work on it. What teams you think might trade up, right? Is that where we're headed with this one?
It's not just trade up, but draft night trades in general. Whenever the draft lottery fell, the order, just glancing at it, I was like, man, there's a lot of really good top tier teams in the lottery and a lot of teams that have multiple picks that can't even make as many draft picks fit their roster as they have. And so looking at it in retrospect and hearing all the rumors, I identified almost 9 or 10 teams that are almost guaranteed to be active in trades on draft night.
And we're hearing that too. It's not just from you, but from others. Brian Windhorst predicts this to be a very active trade season. So I trust Brian's judgment on that kind of thing. And it just makes sense. I mean, there are a lot of teams that are over the second apron or have a chance to be over the second apron, and they want to get under. Some don't want to pay so much tax. Some have had injury. Boston plays into that. They just have new ownership, but also they're looking at maybe a reload season as they're waiting for Tatum to get healthy. The Bucks, Lillard's going to miss the season. I mean, there's a lot of those kind of situations. And then, of course, there's a team in OKC, which as we're speaking right now is 1-1 in the finals. But they're loaded with talent and draft picks, and teams realize they have to chase them down. So let's go through it. Teams you think might be active on draft night, and I'll give you an indication, not that I know anything, but I'll give you an indication of whether or not I think they should be, what they should be looking for. So go ahead.
Absolutely. So we're going to rule out Dallas. I think it's a no-brainer. You take Cooper Flag. The San Antonio Spurs, there's been so much smoke and reports. I follow local reporter Dusty. He goes by the Spurs reporter on Twitter. And there's so much smoke with him and Giannis, him and Kevin Durant, the Spurs and Kevin Durant. They really feel like there's going to be an opportunity for them. They have the 2nd overall pick, which will be Dylan Harper. They have the 14th overall pick from the Atlanta Hawks and their 38th pick, which is early in the 2nd round. So they have an ability to acquire Durant without losing all their draft capital. And the tricky part is, the one thing Dusty pointed out on Twitter is that San Antonio is so cash strapped, or Phoenix is so cash strapped, up against second apron. It's going to be very hard to match salaries. So even though other teams may be in the mix, matching the salaries could be a problem.
Yeah, and they can't aggregate. We dealt with all that last year when Miami was looking at dealing with Phoenix for a variety of different things, whether it was, they didn't want Beal, but it was trading Jimmy there, or maybe trying to get Durant. So you look at the Spurs, we talk about them being active, but you don't think there's any chance they trade the number 2 pick, right?
Only if it's for Giannis.
Right. That's what I would think too.
That's the only way. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see why they would. I mean, there's been some talk about them moving Fox. I don't know why they would do that when they just acquired him. They have the 14th pick. They don't have to trade Castle necessarily. Right. So it seems to me like they're going to keep most of that core intact and keep the number 2 pick and make a move there. But you're right. Durant could be potentially had for that 14th pick. They're not the team that owns Phoenix's picks. We'll get into that in a second. I think it's another team you're going to talk about. But yes, that's the situation with the Spurs right now, and they're transitioning to a new coach, although Pop is still involved in the process, and they want to get good quickly. Like we've talked about that, they want to build around Wemby quickly. They don't know how long the timeline is, and Alex and I got into that on the last podcast. We were talking about specifically Durant. All right, so San Antonio, we expect to be active, but maybe for that 14th pick in the draft. Okay, who else do you have?
Absolutely, Philadelphia, the 76ers. You have the oft-injured Joel Embiid. You have Maxey. You have Jared McCain in the backcourt. And so if you're picking at the 3rd overall pick in this draft, you're talking about a player like VJ Edgecombe, Trey Johnson, any of those guys. So, I mean, you could add another wing or guard to that rotation, but the whole core of that team is supposed to be built around Joel Embiid.
Right.
I think they could look to shore that up either with a veteran like Kristaps Porzingis, who may be for sale in Boston, or even trading down to get one of the centers and recoup some capital for the future as well, because you need Joel Embiid insurance.
What do you think of the prospect of them moving Paul George with this pick?
I think they would have to attach something else, because that contract is a monster.
Yeah.
Unless the team thinks they're a Paul George away, which I don't really see him at that stage of his career being.
Well, the Clippers did, and it didn't cost them anything but the future MVP, another All-Star, 5 other picks.
Is that all?
That interview with Doc Rivers that I saw was, well, we knew SGA was going to be great. Yeah, it's a lot of picks. But that's what Kawhi and ownership wanted at the time. And by the way, he did also. I do think Philadelphia's going to be active. There's the other thing here in play, which is Daryl Morey, the genius label, is starting to wear off here a little bit. It should have a long time ago, but it feels like he's going to get one more swing at this thing, and then he may scoot somewhere else.
How long have we been trusting the process?
Well, it's not even there. He's not even his process, though. Like and I'm not a Morey guy at all. Okay, at all. I think he's highly overrated. He made one trade for Harden, and a lot of the other stuff has not worked out. But I mean, the process was Hinkie, and then it was Colangelo, and then it was Brand, and now it's Morey. And the reality is he's left with a broken down Joel Embiid. Yes, Maxey was a good pick. Piers and McCain was a good pick. The Paul George thing was, another desperation move here, and to give him that kind of money. So I do expect them to be active, because he has to be active. All right, give me one more here before the break.
Yeah, so the Utah Jazz. Jazz are going to be sellers and buyers, I think, in a way, if the right deal comes along, because they've been trying to move, Kessler and Lauri Markkanen for 2 seasons now. So I think that's going to be
Sexton.
And Colin Sexton
and Clarkston. All of those names have come up, and Ainge basically appointed his son, and his son came out and said, "We're not tanking anymore." It's interesting, by the way, because they were the most egregious of all the tanking teams when they would come into Miami. Like they would just sit guys to start the fourth quarter, and they would never come back. Like this has been obvious, and but even this past year, because they didn't do that because they were up about 45. That was during the whole Jimmy situation with Miami. But Sexton's a useful player. I think he's got to be in the right program. Defensively, his obviously his energy activity I think would be helpful to a lot of teams. I don't think he's a great playmaker. Their efficiency sometimes goes. Clarkson, at this stage, I think he's like a ninth guy, but there he was playing quite a bit more. Kessler, he's sort of been popped and then didn't, and Markkanen they paid a whole lot of money to. So we'll see what it is that they do. They're not a team that attracts free agents, so they need to be aggressive in the trade market. And we'll talk about more of these as we come back. Before we do, though, Cash App. Now, again, as I've said before, I'm not the most modern. My daughter says I met Abraham Lincoln. I saw Wilt Chamberlain score 100 points. But when it comes to money, you got to get it there, right? And Cash App is how you want to do that. So check it out. We've got an exclusive code at Cash App right now. It's a referral code on the floor. So here's what you got to do. Download Cash App, sign up, use the referral code on the floor in your profile, send $5 to a friend within 14 days. That's around the time of the draft. And you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. What else is Cash App? Well, it's secure. That's one of the reasons that you should definitely use that. Sending money with Cash App actually feels safe. They look out for you if something seems sketchy. They see you might be sending money to a potential scammer. They'll warn you. They make you think twice before you hit send. It's like having a personal bodyguard for your cash. It's like having David Holcomb guard your cash. You can also spice up your payments with custom text stamps and backgrounds, because why should paying your friend for brunch be so boring? If for whatever reason you don't already have Cash App, and I can tell you most of those in the network, including all three of my regular hosts here on 5 on the Floor have it, just download it from your phone's app store, sign up, enter our code that's on the floor in your profile, send $5 to a friend, and you get $10 just for getting started. You got to do that within the next 14 days. And as we said, terms apply. All right. Give me the terms of other trades here. Let's pivot to this. So we've got San Antonio, Philly, Utah, all teams we expect to be active. What's another one?
I've heard Charlotte as well, but I don't want to get into that because it's not as apparent. But also you're looking at the Brooklyn Nets, and they're like almost assuredly going to be in that vein, because all of their whole roster outside of like Cam Thomas is for sale, basically. Like there really isn't a guy they've been building around, and they really need to retool if they're going to do anything to get out of the rut that they're in. And they have 5 draft picks as it is, 8, 19, 26, 27, and 36.
Wow.
And so they have a lot of room to maneuver.
And they have cap space. And they have cap space. The one team that has cap space. And you mentioned Cam Thomas. I'm not entirely sure he's staying either, although I think it's more likely than Cam Johnson at this stage. But they've been trying to move Cam Johnson for a couple of years, but their price has been so high. But I guess your price would be high too, Adel, if you managed to get 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, right?
Absolutely. Why not keep trying?
That's just as many first-round picks as you can. I do expect them to be active. I actually could see them being the third team in maybe some deals that the Heat get involved in. There is a relationship between the ownership of the Nets and the Heat, which so I always sort of monitor that. You've mentioned with the Nets, as we move to free agency, that Davion Mitchell has the same agent, or actually it's Fonseca who's mentioned that, but he's mentioned
Brian did. Yeah,
Brian did that Davion Mitchell has the same agent as a few Nets players that are currently on the roster. So they may be a threat in terms of signing an offer sheet, a restricted offer sheet for him. So that's one to check. All right. So we got Brooklyn, and they're in a rebuild, but a rebuild that they could accelerate pretty quickly. And they're letting Sean Marks do it, even though he hasn't really succeeded with the last couple. Okay, what you got?
So the New Orleans Pelicans, prior to all the Zion stuff, now it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So we can kind of skip them because of that. But also the Toronto Raptors and the Houston Rockets. I think both of those organizations are going to be players potentially on draft night. The Toronto Raptors are retooling. They only have the 9th overall pick in 39, and they're still trying to rebuild that core. The 9th pick, I don't think they're going to move off of that unless it's something significant. And they need a center, so maybe Porzingis, because they could rebuild that way. But I think Porzingis is more of a guy that needs to go to a contender. I can't see the Toronto Raptors giving up something to bring in Porzingis. So I say they draft Malawach and then maybe use some of that cap space they have to try to absorb some of these higher price contracts. And then Houston, they're the other ones that are in that bidding war for Kevin Durant.
They don't need to draft any more players, right? Like, aren't they at the point where they have prospects that can't even get on the court? It took Reed Shepherd like most of the season. And so I don't know if, we talked about it before. He thought he was going to be rookie of the year. Cam Whitmore is another one who hasn't been getting consistent playing time. Jabari Smith, it doesn't seem like they're fully utilizing him. They do fully utilize Jalen Green. I'm not sure if that's a good thing. They've got Sengun. They just got a lot of guys.
A lot.
They don't really need to draft anybody, right? Like,
correct. And they have 2 picks, and the thing is, around their pick at pick 10, who are they really going to take that's going to be a difference maker for that team to get any type of playing time right away? I mean, Kasper Siakachonis, he's not going to, he could be there, but probably not. The small point guards like Jace Richardson, they already got one of those. Yeah. Colin Murray Boyles, is he going to play over Jabari? Probably not. No, so there just isn't really a fit in that part of the draft. I could definitely see players on draft night to wheel and deal a little bit.
I mean, they are the team that really could accelerate quickly. They're so far ahead of schedule, finishing second in the West, and yet predictably lost to a more experienced team in the first round in Golden State. So, I don't know. I mean, Amen Thompson may take another leap next year. Sengun may take another leap. I feel like he's a little closer to his ceiling maybe than some of the other guys are. But a lot of good young players. But they're the team. They're a team that could be better next year and win fewer games. We see that happen all the time. So it does feel like cash in time. All right. So you have another one before we go?
One last one for you, and it makes all the sense in the world, and it's scary to think about. The Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah.
They have the 15th overall pick, the 24th pick, and the 44th pick, plus all their stash for the future.
Yeah.
And they got guys sitting on their bench like Nikola Topic, a first-round pick from the previous season who has not played a game, mostly due to injury from that season. So they could definitely be players to retool and continue to push and separate themselves from the rest of the league.
Do you see a possibility of them just moving off these picks and for future picks and just keep stockpiling into the future? It feels like, or a stash player too. I mean, you mentioned Topic ended up being a stash, but he's already back playing again or practicing.
Top 10
again.
Pick is a stash. Yeah,
I mean, it is. It's insane, and it really is. It's they're in this weird space though because they sort of have to win because these contracts are going to get excessive. But the point is, when the contracts get excessive, then I don't know if you want to move one of your core 3. You're certainly not moving SGA, but would you move Jalen Johnson at some point if you've elevated one of these other guys? But they are built essentially like an elite college program right now. Like that's what they are, and Presti's going to keep rotating guys in, but they got to cash in. They got to cash in one of these times because they didn't cash in the last time. All right, so we'll close with this. You don't have the Heat as one of your most active teams. They typically have not been on draft night. We've mentioned they've never really moved up much. They moved up to get Norris Cole. There's very few examples. In fact, I can't even come up with the second one. They've typically moved down or they traded out. They're not especially exciting on draft night. They as we talked about, they kind of wait. The player that falls to them, they maybe take a player that everybody else didn't think should be taken there, and that player ends up outperforming a lot of the players that were taken earlier. And that, we believe, is their most, unless they deal the pick, is still the most likely scenario, right? With what they do with 20.
The reason being is they don't have the ammo to do any of those things, even if they wanted to. And they're historically not going to do it. So if you factor that into the probability matrix, then the answer is no. But
yes,
some things that we reported about players they've had in. Now, this is very, very, very early in the process. Their scouting of all these undrafted guys, which they do every year anyway, but you haven't heard of any of the guys that may be around that area coming in for workouts yet. You could maybe read into that and say, hey, they're gearing up to not have a pick, but it's so early in the process. Like, it could change tomorrow.
Poor Adam Simon. We'll do all that work. And they're going to end up basically taking a couple guys undrafteds, and in 3 years, those guys are going to leave for free agency to get $60 million. Digital Adel, we appreciate you. Thank you. We'll do more draft episodes coming up. We do want to mention that Heat are having a draft party on June 25th. We'll be there. Our crew will be there. I'll be there with Brady and Alex. We'll be recording from there. So come check it out. All the information is on heat.com. And obviously, we will be there, and we'll be set up with our podcast equipment and all that good stuff. Have a good one, everybody.